just going to open the meeting.
Can I move?
Thanks.
Thanks, Chair. Can I just move that the Deputy Lord Mayor be the chair of today's meeting in the absence of the Lord Mayor? All those in favour?
Right.
Against? Okay,
Thank you very much for that. Much appreciated. So we have an apology from the Lord Mayor Anna Reynolds. I don't think we have. Do we have any other apologies or leave of absence?
it's okay.
We have the Alderman Zerko's a leave of absence.
Yeah, okay, thank you very much. I'd just like to start off with an acknowledgement to country. I would like to acknowledge the original custodians of the land on which the City of Hobart was built. I'd like to thank them for their decades and generations of custodianship of this beautiful country, and that we are all lucky to be here. And I'd like to acknowledge that this was and always will be Aboriginal land, and in acknowledging our Tasmanian Aboriginal people, we add to our identity. Can I have a confirmation of the minutes, please? Moved by Councillor Dutta.
No, second.
No second. Carried unanimously. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. Consideration of supplementary items. There are none. Thank you. Indications of conflicts of interest. Are there any? Being none, we will move to transfer of agenda items. Would anybody like to transfer any items? No, being none, we'll move on to reports of special committees. 6.1, the City Heritage Committee. Are there? Move that?
Yeah,
Can I have somebody move that?
Yes, Chair.
Thank you. Are there any comments? Yes, Councillor
Just
Dutta.
a question for clarification. I understand that the St. John's decision was appealed and it's in mediation. Is it still going through that process, or has it been completed?
You should refer that to Ms. Abbey.
Ms. Abbey, thank you.
I actually put that to the chair. Any principle agreement has been reached between the parties, and we're just finalising documentation to be filed with the tribunal. Getting involved with both consent memorandum that modifies the plan and a side agreement between the other parties.
Just that. That's right.
Thank you very much. Was there any other comments or questions? Being none, I'll just put that. All those in favour?
Right.
Those against? Carried unanimously. Thank you. We'll now move on to items for workshopping. 7.1, which is the Bloomberg Philanthropy City Leadership Program presentation. Thank you very much, Ms. Abbey.
There's actually going to be a group effort today. Great. So we've had quite a few people that have participated in the Bloomberg program, and we just thought it would be good to be able to give an overview to council as to what's actually been happening over the last year. So starting with Karen and I, we initiated the project just after I arrived. So
yep.
Yeah, so thanks.
Thank you.
So here's a list of all the programs that we have been successful in receiving Bloomberg support. So there are, I think, 6 that we're going to speak to tonight. There is an additional Mayor's Challenge that we applied for, but we were unsuccessful. There are only a very limited number of councils who are successful with that one. But so the first one I'm going to talk to is the City Leadership Initiative, which Michael and I were involved with last year. So this was a year-long leadership program attended by first the Lord Mayor. She went ahead of us in July last year, and then Michael and I followed a month later. So we started off with just under a week in New York for an in-person intensive session. When I say intensive, I really mean intensive. It was taught in a Harvard-style lecture theatre, which had been recreated in Bloomberg's offices in New York, and taught with Harvard lecturers and in the Harvard style, which is very much a case-based approach. So we had a lot of reading to do, and then we would discuss the case studies throughout the days. So there were 39 cities, and we were the only Australian city lucky enough to be there. Following the New York sessions, there were monthly online sessions, which were also valuable, along with individual coaching sessions and a variety of other aspects to the program. A big theme throughout the 4 days that we were there and following was the use of data, this sort of mantra of if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. Another strong theme was collaboration, not only within the city, as they very much called it, City Hall, but also with our stakeholders and community. So that was a very strong theme. It felt like we were actually quite a long way down this path, certainly compared to some of the other councils there. Innovation was another strong theme, and I'll go into in a moment another specific program that we went into in terms of innovation. And motivating through storytelling, and that is really capturing the work that we are doing and making sure that it's understood well within the community. Hopefully you've all seen something similar to this in terms of what are we even doing here sitting around at a council. It's finding that balance between having an authorising environment, creating public value, but also having capacity and the resources to carry out what we did. So while that's quite a simple diagram in many ways, we spent a lot of time unpacking that, looking at the various elements and really trying to maximise the input and obtaining community benefit from the things that we're focusing on. We spent a lot of time really focusing on us as individuals and our leadership style. We spent time as the big group, in small groups, and as I said, as doing individual development. It's a little bit hard to distill a whole year-long program down into 5 minutes. But these were some of the phrases that we heard over and over when we were there. In God we trust, everybody else bring data. It's a very strong theme. If you can't measure it, you can't manage it. What do I have to get what I want? Sorry, what do I have to get what I need to do what I want? Knowing your why and your values, leadership paint reality and give hope. And the overall Bloomberg mantra is ensuring better, longer lives for the greatest number of people. So we heard from some pretty inspiring people, and I know that I developed as a leader. I think Michael probably feels the same way, and the Lord Mayor probably does as well. So we hope that that's really been, helped us as part of ELT and as part of an ongoing journey, I guess. So from a sort of add-on to that City Leadership Initiative was the ability to participate in what they call the innovation track. So again, another Bloomberg Harvard program, but supported by the Centre for Public Impact. So we had a group of, 14 council officers, and this was about a 10-month program. And we had a design coach from the US and we had a project manager from the US. So they sort of stepped us through. We had fortnightly meetings. They came here for 4 site visits, and we basically learned how to do innovation from a human design-based methodology. The first thing, so the focus of our program was, you can see from the top, our ambitious, impactful mission, or our aim was by 2030 to avoid, reduce and recover 95% of organics from residential general waste to contribute to a zero emissions waste. And after much going around in circles, we simmered that down to the problem is lots of people want to put their food scraps in the waste bin. So that was the problem we were trying to solve. We came up with, and we sort of went through a huge big methodology, and it looks quite simple in terms of where we ended up, but it's important to note that through the design methodology, you go in with no preconceived ideas about what the problem is or what the potential solutions are. We did a lot of direct engagement with the community. So each of us did one-on-one interviews with members of the community to try and understand what the issues were from their perspective. And over we found that people said things that we found really surprising and weren't in line with what we originally thought they were going to say. So the ideas that we came up with, we can circulate this list so you can think about it in more detail, but a couple of the top ones were a FOGO library. So for those who don't know, in case there's anybody here, FOGO is Food Organic Garden Organics. So the idea we had was to create a little bit like our e-bike library, to create a library of items that people could borrow to use in their home to see if that fitted into their lifestyle and hopefully recover food waste from the general waste stream. The next one on the list is the Gobbler, which was really just adding in additional communal FOGO facilities. So that might be a giant big dehydrator in a communal space. It might be a few extra bins over there. So that didn't have to be a particular set format. The third one, which I'll mention, I won't go through all of them, was looking at some of the things that we're already looking at as part of the waste strategy. And that was looking at the frequency that we collect FOGO to see if that makes any difference. I know at my house, I certainly don't fill up my FOGO bin every 2 weeks, but for some people, that's a really important thing. They don't like the smell. They don't like the idea of 2-week-old food being out in the bin. And the other element to that was, how do we charge people for FOGO? At the moment, it's opt-in, and that provides a bit of a barrier for people who might not, for example, tenants. They have to get the permission of their landlords. Anyway, the point is that we had 9 ideas, and we, of those, the top 2 ideas, so the FOGO library and the gobbler, we did some prototyping, which is where you test those ideas with the community. And part of the thinking with innovation is to get a little bit loose and free and silly. So you can probably see from the left-hand diagram, we had the idea of, let's have street pigs as part of the FOGO library. Do people want to borrow our pigs? So Councillor Salt, your turn to borrow the pigs next and see if pigs at your house work. Well, we learnt pretty quickly that in the first round of prototyping that actually that was just going a little bit too far. So we pegged it back to compost bins, bokashi bins, and some other of the slightly more traditional, worm farms and those sorts of things. The next thing we did, this is all sponsored by Bloomberg, is to purchase some actual devices. So we then took those into people's houses and said, right, here it is. Here's the worm bin that can actually go inside. How does that fit into your lifestyle? Again, we got some really surprising responses, and just kept on refining our approach and our ideas. I won't go through all the bin to better bits and pieces. That's a body of work, as I said, that's been called out in the waste strategy. And there's the gobbler, people down at the pool getting some input on what they thought in terms of communal recycling. So the idea with innovation is that you look at things differently. It can be as structured and extensive as you like. And we've already found that from the people that participated in the program that it's made a difference in the way that we work and the way that we approach things. So that's just some of the comments that have been made by the team. And certainly, as I said, involving the community right from the outset, as opposed to what we do tend to do as an organisation, is to do what we think as officers and elected members, get to a point, then we go out for engagement, which sometimes we've already locked in our preconceived ideas about what the problem is and what the solutions might be. So where to from here? So we've now got a bunch of ideas, and we're working through with ELT to progress what we think are feasible as part of the waste strategy and some that are feasible as individual projects. That body of work's still ongoing, and that's being informed by a matrix, I guess, of impact on the climate and likely effectiveness with the community members. One of the challenges that we had with this program was influencing people in their own homes and trying to create behaviour that we're not really in control of. The other thing that we're doing is to expand what we're doing on the program to make sure that it doesn't die with those 14 council officers, and that we are going to create an internal program that we can roll out to the rest of the organisation. In case you don't know, one of our values as an organisation is creativity and innovation. And so it's quite important to me that we now try and embed that in the way that we work. We already are in many ways, but it'll just give people that extra level of understanding for what we can do. Also, although this is less developed, possibly a governance process just to make sure members understand what's going on, ELT and officers, just to set those matters out. So I think that might be the end of the innovation program. The third one that I'm speaking to is I think hopefully all of you saw Oliver's Greenway study. He's done a whole separate presentation on that. Amazing work, honestly, just did a power of work in the 10 weeks that he was here. Very, very impressive. So that body of work is now on our website. And it's also being used to inform our bike strategy, which is being finalised as a draft early next year. So he did amazing work. It's not really it's not quite developed enough for us to say that is where we need to be, but a little bit of extra work, we'll be able to bring that back to elected members. So from those 3 projects I've been involved in, I can honestly say it's just an amazing privilege to have been involved at no cost to council. Yes, it's council time, but I think the investment that they've made in us will really put us in good stead for the future. Not sure who's next.
Can I quick throw some concrete to each presenter instead? Chair, if that's all.
Sure, yeah.
Look, the innovation stuff, like what you just talked us through as an exemplar, I reckon that is like a rip away to actually drum out these creative ideas, because all of our staff have heaps of creativity and expertise. And so like it's really good to see directors and CEOs encouraging these kind of informal projects that are not, I guess they're not endorsed in any way. There's kind of a very organic way of getting to the end result. But like, I think it's super exciting. I don't know I'd be actually really interested to hear what Councillor Harvey thinks, because some of these ideas you've put to council in commentary over the years that I've been here.
Look, I would have liked to have done the course.
Yeah.
That's the bit that probably bugs me though. I didn't get a chance to do it either, to do it as well.
Mm.
But yeah, lots of stuff. But it's a way of thinking though,
Mm.
you know, and don't talk to people who don't think like that. They'll tell you that, well, we don't do stuff like that around here.
But shouldn't you talk to those people to convert them, Bill?
No, it's too hard.
Oh,
Just work with the people that you can work with.
no, not at all.
Yeah.
Because you've got to bring everyone with
We've
you.
all got our own way though, John. I do my stuff
Right,
successfully.
were there any questions, comments,
Thank
or
you.
personal
Sorry,
opinions?
just
Thank you. Let's
conversation
move on
there,
to the next one, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks. Oh, sorry, yes, Councillor
Yeah,
Dawson.
sorry if I just want to look at it from an economic point of view though. One, how much is it costing us? Or it's not costing us anything. What's it costing the council? Two, for people to travel that far, my question is it, can you do that online instead of traveling that far? So the economic aspect before I ask
Yeah,
the
I'll
other
probably
question.
hand the second one over, but from my understanding, we were told in the beginning this was actually funded by Bloomberg, so it wasn't any cost to council.
It's not possible to do the whole thing
Yeah.
on Teams. We obviously did the monthly catch-ups on Teams at 1 o'clock in the morning. But you can't do the intensive one-on-one stuff. That has to be done in person. That was a week-long program.
So I just wanted to clarify that. So there's no cost to the council economically. Point.
Time, only staff time.
I just wanted to make that clear. That's all. And point number 2: how are people chosen to be participating? I mean, hearing what Councillor Harvey has said, what's the priority or what's the criteria used?
Yeah, so it depends on what the opportunity is. So the first opportunity, for instance, I guess I was asked to go as CEO. There was another opportunity to go along with me, and so we did a competition, if you like, with across executive and senior leaders to determine who would get that spot, and Karen competed and won that. Cheng, who you're going to hear from, was very narrowly behind Karen actually in that, and Cheng was fortunate to get a space, which we'll talk to you in a minute about his time at Harvard. And the rest was, again, Mike will talk to you about a program that we've just engaged in, which was around people and culture and recruitment and selection and retaining employees. So we chose the leaders that were most appropriate for that. So.
Right. So just one final question then. Would there be an opportunity for any of the elected members, say for example, if we were to compete and most of us voted for Councillor Harvey, is that possible or no?
It's not really aimed at, it's aimed at organisational focus as opposed to the political class. And I heard you talk about that. I mean, the biggest, I guess, impact that I've seen from this program, and I think you'll start to be feeling it is in terms of the culture of our organisation and the employees that we have. The retention rates of our employees has come significantly down, and that's in a large part with the additional expertise and leadership capability that the organisation is developing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments? Yes.
Yeah, so it doesn't cost council, but how much staff time, how many weeks and how many people? Because when we were looking at a recent, the recent one with the Lord Mayor's, that's significant cost because it wasn't just the cost of the fact that she will still be paid no matter, so she's obviously being paid to be away, but also there was someone who had to be paid to replace as well. So there is a cost, and I'm assuming that we didn't pay for flights either or accommodation. Yeah. So I think it'd be more fair to ascertain the actual cost, not just the cost of the fact we still are. No one said I'll not be paid while I'm away. Everyone was paid while they're away, but additionally we also would have paid people additional wages to replace. So
Not
I
in
think-
all cases.
yeah, but still, I think that would be a fair cost to ascertain.
Yeah. Oh, there's also I didn't charge any overtime for doing courses between 1 and
Yeah,
2
I was wondering
and
about
3
that.
o'clock in the morning. So
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
so there's a lot of swings and roundabouts around
Yeah.
that. So
Yeah.
And the days were really long.
Yeah.
So I was lucky enough to attend. So that's the Harvard Kennedy School at over in Cambridge. So I attended for a week. So it started at lunchtime on a Sunday, finished lunchtime on the Friday, and I was able to choose what subject I did. So I decided to do leading successful programs about using evidence to assess effectiveness. And the reason that I chose to do that was really around heading into the service reviews and being able to understand the importance of some of this information as we head into doing those. Some of the modules that we covered off were impact evaluations, theory of change, process evaluations, logic models, system thinking, evidence frameworks, and AI and evidence. And as Karen said, a lot of it is really around case studies. So we have all this information to read before we go. And you prepare for these case studies and then they work through them in the sessions. That's me with Brittany from Nashville and Jorge from New Rochelle in New York, who were also funded by Bloomberg in this particular program I attended, of which there were about 60 participants. So the key takeaways from me from my work there and how they link to the service review. So impact evaluations really seek to answer what is the effect of a program / intervention, and then on the certain outcomes of interest. So it may be, we want to assess how healthy Hobart, and, so we understand why we're delivering it, and then being able to measure and assess the effectiveness of that program over time. So by doing this, it will determine what programs work well, which ones are not working well, and then how can we improve existing programs if they're not working to what the outcomes we're expecting to achieve. So some of the key focus areas that we'll work through as we work through service review. So the first one really was around what they call question zero. So this question zero really is important for providing clarity on what services are aiming to achieve. So it really is understanding the why and the purpose of the programs that we deliver. The importance of using the theory of change, so it can really provide clarity to team members about, what they're working towards. It's the why and the how, and it sets a roadmap for potentially improvements or change that we need to see. One of the quotes, so the program was led by 2 professors, Dan Levy and Mark Fagan, and one of the things that they really iterated to us over time, people aren't against change, it's actually the fear of loss that frightens more people about needing to change or why things do. The logic model, so this one really, it's about setting out a roadmap to achieve outcomes, and it can really help with dealing with the expectations of people, and particularly around the expectation that we need more resources to make a service effective. And, sometimes with the logic model, you actually start at the end of where you want to get to, and then work your way backwards. So there was so much information in the week, and they did say to us, don't go back thinking you're going to implement everything that you've been taught, because there is just so much to it all. at the end of the day, as an accountant, I loved hearing this one. You know, the cost benefit analysis has to be there because it really determines whether a program is successful, and that's really then understanding what trade-offs you may be willing to accept to continue a program. When there's underutilisation of a service, what they said to us, you really need to do further analysis and understand what opportunities that presents. So, you know, we may determine that a program really isn't delivering to the standard that we need. So, you know, what can we do to get more people involved, or is there really a point that you just go, no, this is just not successful, so there's no use continuing it. And then the last point really is this system level thinking. So at the end of the day, you know, most thinking, Mark was really keen on this, is really quick and reactive. He said system thinking, you really just need to stop and slow down a little bit at times, because it's, you know, really making sure that by fixing one issue, we're not going to create a problem somewhere else. So they were the key takeaways that I had from mine, and now I'll hand over to Cheng, who I think's up next.
Were there any comments, questions? No? Thank
Thanks,
you.
Michelle.
Thank you so much, Michelle. Thank you.
All right. And I attended the leadership decision making that was in Cambridge as well. So the reason I picked that program was because it was important for what I do in terms of making decision on project management, risk management. You know, just on a daily basis, we make decisions all the time. It was a very extensive program. The program consists of about 70 participants. There were lecturers from Harvard, from Princeton, Georgetown, really good lecturers as well. They are consultants for the US government as well. So the information that was shared at the program was just invaluable. It was really good. And we had participants from all over the world as well. So it was a very well run program. There were a lot of tools being taught at the program, but these are the 4 key ones on the slide. So the one thing that I learned from the program was about understanding cognitive biases. Obviously, biases, it can happen at any particular point in time. So it's about understanding and really unpacking what those biases could mean. And then as a decision-making architect, as they call it, it's about making a decision, making an environment for myself to make a good decision, and also creating an environment for others to make good decisions as well. And that was something that's really important. There were also strategies on how to manage conflict, particularly conflict resolution, because that's something that a lot of leaders have to do. There were a lot of discussion and focus on how to maintain communication relationship, and also on the interest as well. So, and all these are based on the 7-element framework by Harvard, in order to make sure that we can resolve any conflict. So interest is obviously a very important key when trying to manage the conflict. And there were also discussion about the group think as well, or more so the danger of groupthink and how to manage that, which is through a more structured process in making a decision. And that's probably it. And the other thing I'll probably say is I've started applying what I've learned within the work environment, and I've also run a presentation with a couple, about 50 people, 50 employees from the organization as well, to go through what I've learned, because I believe that a lot of what I've learned is applicable for a lot of people other than just the capital projects group.
You didn't include your pictures of the asset conditions over there.
No, I haven't.
Which, well, what did you think of the assets over there?
Yeah, so one thing that was really interesting was, people are quite critical of the asset in Hobart, but I went over, their condition of the footpath is really horrible. It's really bad, because over here in Boston. So what we have over here is that we have a level intervention of 25 millimeter, whereas over there I've encountered footpath which has got that much gap in the footpath, and the width was like, I think almost as tall as this. So it was quite poorly managed for a country as rich as the United States. So that was quite surprising.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Yes, Councillor Dashwood.
I just make some observations, I don't want to usually say this, but I'm just saying it as an experience. The concept of cognitive dissonance, cognitive bias, conflict resolution, I taught that 25 years ago in psychology. Now, so what I'm saying is that these concepts are not new, but are they applied in a new way? And when one comes back again, I'm seeing it from a theological perspective because of my experience. It's easy for us to preach this, but when it comes to applying as Christians, that's where our difficulty is. So my question is, having this knowledge and then applying it at the workplace, how will that be measured to say, yeah, it's impacting? And what's the measurement of this that is, has been fruitful?
Yeah. So I'll probably can only speak for myself,
Yeah.
I suppose. So one thing at the program was they run a bit of a test on all the participants so that we understand our tendency to react to some of these biases, which was really good because they run it at the start of the program, and then through the program it taught us all these tools and stuff. And then at the end of the program, that showed us the result as well. For me, it was good to really understand my tendency to react to those biases, and by understanding that, it allows me to pause and think before I make a certain decision as well. And also by understanding how people potentially could react to biases helps me to create an environment for others to make better decisions as well. And Michelle spoke about system 1 and system thinking. So we were taught about system 1, system 2 thinking as well. So trying to have more go more towards a system 2 thinking rather than system 1 thinking, where it's more sort of reactive and more impromptu. So it does help. And when I share that information with my team as well, just the opportunity to talk about it allows others to pause and think before they make certain decisions, which are really important.
Yeah, so it can be measured that it's working in your particular group.
In my own assessment, I believe that it is working because I've applied that and I've made decisions that might be a bit different if I had not attended that program. So that's sort of the only measurement that I can have for myself. But it's more like an intangible measurement.
Yeah.
So that's probably my only comment on that.
Okay. Just one more question again from observation. So how much of this, with regards to conflict resolution, cognitive bias, cognitive dissonance, etc., how much of that can be now shared with the elected members that we can learn as well?
Oh, well, I mean, Cheng has done a session with staff with a bit more detail, and he'd be more than happy to provide it to elected members if you're interested.
I would love to, yeah.
Yeah, well, we can organise that.
To transfer it to us as well. So, thank you.
Yeah, good.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
We've got one more to go.
Yep.
So, myself, David Reeve, Laura Eaton and Angie Everingham were fortunate enough to go to Harvard to do the Managing in City Government program. And the aims or goals as were stated in this program were firstly to understand talent management as a strategic function and learning to improve it, exploring promising practices and methods for retaining, and supporting talent, creating a community of learning and action, making progress on the city-specific talent management challenge, and building leadership capabilities to manage change. So they were the objectives and goals that the program set itself. We were one of 15 cities and 59 participants, representing over 12 million residents across the city who actually participated in the program. As you can see there, we're the only city from Australia to be selected. We had 2 from Africa, 2 from Europe, 1 from UK and 9 from the USA who attended the program. It was actually a competitive process to be involved in the program. We were interviewed prior to being selected to conduct the program work. I believe there was about 30 cities who put their hand up for it, and we were lucky enough to be one of them, and very fortunate to be the only Australian city selected. When they asked us what our challenge was going to be, we did set a relatively high level of challenge at the start there, which was to develop and implement a streamlined recruitment and onboarding process that seeks to attract, retain and develop high-performing staff, reduce staff turnover and enhance the diversity and inclusiveness and strength of the organisational culture in alignment with our One Hobart Culture Plan. As you can see, that is a massive challenge in itself. What they asked us to do when we went to interview and discuss the challenge, though, was to drill down into something a bit more specific that we wanted to tackle. So what we chose to do was, as an immediate challenge, was to actually reduce our turnover rate from 31% of staff who have been here employed at the city for less than 3 years. So that's an extremely high turnover rate, and one obviously we want to reduce significantly, and that's the focus that we had for our particular challenge. Interestingly enough, though, just before I go on there, interestingly enough, when we did speak to other cities about our challenge, there were a number of other cities that had a similar problem to us, that is high turnover rates and the like. In fact, I think there was one city that had a turnover rate in a particular department was over 43% annually. So it was massive sort of issues. That was the pleasing thing, just coming back to Councillor Dutta's issue about could this be done on Teams, was actually being able to be in the room with other cities and learn about their problems themselves and working groups beyond your own city as well, and to meet other people. I think when we went there, being just from Australia, to think, you know, we're probably a little bit behind. We've got all these fantastic cities from all around the world who are probably leaps and bounds in front of us. They're not. We are certainly holding our own when it comes to what we do here in this city, and certainly with what we're trying to tackle. So that was a pleasing thing. I think when you always get into these situations, you think things are tough where you are at and you're not progressing well, but when you compare yourselves to like cities, we're actually doing quite well, and that was something pleasing. So one of the benefits of getting together was sharing our experiences and what we're doing and how we're tackling it. Over the course of the week, and we were talking about 10 and 12-hour days that we had for effectively 4.5 days we were there. They were very, very long sessions, and with readings into the night and things like that. We learned various tools and behaviours. Each of these particular tools here, we spent at least an hour and a half on. There were pre-readings, there were discussions in various groups and the like, that various Harvard professors would come across and discuss this with us. I can't possibly get across to you in 5 minutes what these things were about, but these are things we discussed: problem statements and self-assessment, looking at behavioural public administration approaches, behavioural mapping exercises, interventions when it comes to impact and feasibility, do more with less when we assess our capabilities, gaps and licence, ensuring we have an action plan with key outcomes, and measuring success. Some of the key learnings that we had, though, when we look at the innovation technology side of things, this was a bit of a saying that came to the fore about demo, not memo. So this was about actually demonstrating the type of behaviour you want to have within your organisation, as distinct from sending out memos about what type of behaviour you expect. A failure forward framework where you give people permission, and as part of that innovation work, to actually permission to fail, to learn. So it's not a retribution process. So you've made a failure or mistake here, but if you have innovation, you're going to have a lot of failures in that process, and you need to accept that. Experimentation promotes learning and innovating. Communication's key, identifying learning from our recruitment approach. Drive for ongoing engagement with buy-in, building a culture of trust and collaboration. Important for me, seeing that a people strategy is not just a task for HR, but a task for all of the organisation. Examining the pushes and pulls of why people leave and join an organisation. So 30 of these items or issues were found, the pushes and pulls, why people left their current employment to go somewhere else, and what keeps people also within an organisation. And these are the things that we'll be starting to incorporate when we look at exit strategies and interviews as well. Developing people, and touching on a point that Michelle also made, people don't fear the change, they fear the loss that change brings. So that was obviously a common theme there. One of the real eye-opening moments for me, I must admit, was about the use of artificial intelligence in talent management, and what we could do here is streamlining recruitment and candidate selection, how we could have personalised employee development and training, workforce planning succession, enhancing HR processes, career pathway visualisations, real-time performance tracking and workload monitoring. This is such a game changer with what AI can offer. It's got a long way to go, and it's certainly nowhere near perfect at the moment. But from an efficiency perspective, productivity perspective, AI is certainly going to be just a big change. It's amazing. Even in the few months I've had more of an eye to it, just to see the development of what AI can do for us as an organisation. So this is certainly the place for us to be. And as it says, embracing the possibilities. What we're required to do is a final presentation. All cities were asked to give a 5-minute presentation plus 5-minute question and answers. We came up with over 40 possible actions identified to address the particular challenge we spoke about through reducing the retention rates or improving the retention rates. We had to have a look at the actions according to the impact and feasibility matrix, that is low or high impact, low and high feasibility, and how that can be implemented. We've already presented our work to the executive group, the ELT. As a work group, the 4 of us are continuing to meet to refine and advance our actions. We're having regular check-ins with the Harvard Bloomberg team. As Michael said before, the 1 a.m. to 2:30 a.m. meetings are great, so that Harvard has been kind enough to look at how they can better accommodate the time difference with us, and we'll be catching up with them. Our people and culture team will be coordinating and implementing the actions that come from the work that we've done at Harvard and how we can implement that in the recruitment and retention strategies for the city. That is our group picture. So a very diverse group of people, a wonderful group of people who had similar challenges to us. We learnt a lot from them. We're still maintaining contact with this group of people as well. There's a WhatsApp group that feeds in, and it's been amazing and a fantastic opportunity. This is the first professional development I've had in 3 years since I've been at the council. So to have that week away, for me, was a fantastic investment of my time, I felt, and it was just my time, not only beyond the normal work hours, but over the weeks that led up to it. And I think as a return on investment for the city, which was relatively small in cost, I think the 4 of us in particular would agree that it was certainly worth our time. It was worth the 21-hour flight time there and 20-hour flight time back, which was draining. And I'd commend the course to any others who are looking at doing it into the future.
Chair, can I ask, Director, you spoke about retention and attraction, essentially, of staff, which typically I think we talk about staff that are in more frontline roles than yourself, but how much does these opportunities help with retention of people at your level? So I guess the question I'm asking is, how much weight and value do you put on it as an individual to keep you in your role?
I never anticipated or expected to go on something like this, and it's a fantastic opportunity. I hadn't had a lot of opportunity to do professional development in some of the roles just before I got to council, but this was completely out of the blue. But to have this opportunity to invest in myself and my own development, but also to be able to take that development back to the organisation. This was work that we as a city were going to do anyway. What this particular course has enabled us is to learn specific tools that can be applied to the work that we knew we needed to do. We actually said at our presentation, we're going to do this work regardless. The benefit that the Bloomberg Harvard could do those is give us an insight into how we could perhaps go about it in a better way. And that's certainly been the case in a more intensive way. So no, it comes back to your point that, of course, to have this opportunity is a great attraction for our executive group.
Yeah, I think...
want you to keep investing and staying with the city.
Yeah, I guess just time to comment on the whole presentation for me is that, while what Karen presented was great from a creative thinking position, I think that this is the sort of organisation that we want moving forward from where I sit, an organisation that invests in its people, which are any organisation's strongest asset. And if we just leave you guys to rot in your office and we don't send you out into the world to see what everyone else is doing better, it's not just about what you bring back to the organisation, but it's about our investment as a city and you as our employees. So, I mean, to Michael, I would like to see more of this across the entire organisation, to get people out and about and show that we value them So commend everyone involved in it. Thanks for bringing the presentation to us. Thank you.
Councillor Deshel.
Thank you. I just want to endorse the comments made, and I think it's fantastic that people are investing. My concern is that I hope we as elected members will be able to keep the executive, because that's important for us as well. I think we have a role to play. We have great executive leaders. We don't want to lose them. And I think how we can. I would love to. I don't know about the others, to share that information with us so we can play that role as well. Because we as elected members need to play that role to make sure we keep our executive, and then the executive, is a downflow for the other staff to be kept. So I think we need to create this culture, not just the staff and elected members. We have a bang at the elected, of the staff. We've got to be mindful of that as well. Otherwise, we can disappoint you, hurt you, and you guys leave after we've invested in you. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor Harvey.
I think these professional development things are really important, especially for grounding or ground proofing what council does. And who was it that said that we're holding our weight around the world?
We are.
We're a leading council, and that was also a number of years ago. We were in that situation as well. I don't know if it was before you all got here. We were part of the European Union's project, where they sent their commissioners to Australia to find partners, and we were partnered with Katowice.
We are again.
Aren't we still there, are we?
No, we're back again.
We're still with that program?
It's there. We've just been accepted into it again. So.
With the European Union?
Yeah.
Okay, so that was really beneficial, but it was a starting point for a lot of us, and most of us have gone now who did part of that, and that led to us being a guest at the COP24, which was exciting. So it gave us this opportunity to be on the stage with world leaders, and that also was the opportunity to realise that we are actually, travelling well when you compare what others are doing and how they're talking about things that we did years ago. Same happened with ICLEI when we first met up with them in Thailand to review their criteria for auditing countries. We were ahead of them. So they were offering us something that was not as good as we already had. And that was interesting to observe as well. So we've already had some of these opportunities to be involved at a global level, and we've stood out in those things. So to see that we're travelling as well, if not better than many countries, or cities, I should say, is proofing what we do.
Thank you, Councillor.
Yeah, it really did reinforce me, Bill, that we were doing things right as well, that we're not. It helps recalibrate and understand where you sit and where you are. There are some cities that are really struggling with some of what I describe as base issues. We certainly have a long way to go, and we need to improve and address our challenge. But I think we can be proud of what we've done to date and what we're going to do. So it really helped me reset and understand and put into perspective the challenge we have in front of us and how well we're doing.
Thank you. Yes, Alderman Bloomfield.
I was just curious, with all the potential change and so forth, are there any actual changes that have been developed as yet? Or are we still in the process of working out what the changes will be?
We're still in the process of sort of determining whether the 42 odd actions are short, medium or long term, and just mapping out a bit of a, 2 to 3 year plan. So yeah, it's still in development phase.
So the leadership work has been, so we've had a leadership development program for the last 12 months. And again, I would be surprised if you're not hearing around the change in terms of the way the organisation is being led, and the decisions and the culture of the place is significantly improved. So I would say this is in no small way a part of that. So.
I was going to say that the pockets that I'm aware of went from holding on by their teeth to absolutely loving everything and all the rest of it. The reports in the last 2 to 3 months have been absolutely glowing. So the change is profound, which is great, but I wasn't entirely sure whether it came from this or other elements. I would generally attribute a lot of it directly to yourself, to be fair. And likely as a result of those changes, other changes have occurred. I guess the other thing is too that when it comes to elected members, we have got a brilliant project that we've been offered, which was the AICD course, which I know a number of us are taking up, which would be the equivalent, I think, for elected members to do comparatively to this kind of program. I guess the only thing that concerns me overall, and I appreciate that it was free and all the rest of it, but generally speaking, this type of skill set, going forwards, if we were to source this kind of project and materials, I'm surprised that we wouldn't be sourcing it from Australia going forwards because, I've never, we can all go over international to learn stuff, but things like HR are unique in particular to legislation in Australia. And I'm always very conscious of when we want to look at international change in organisational things, whether it departs from what we're actually allowed to do in governance law and so forth. So I guess I'm a little bit more conservative with my choices to think that if we were to establish another program going forwards, that we possibly should be looking a little closer to home, not necessarily for the cost, because I think it's still going to cost us, but I just feel that it would be more aligned with our national culture and also the legal expectations and exposure that we will also have here, as an organisation. But in particular, I'd really like to follow up later to know exactly what the genuine changes were as a result of this. Like anything, you want to reinvest again, but you need to know that we're not just operating on a buzz at this point because it was something new and thrilling and exciting and great, like it probably had some really great material in it, but it has to be attributable and usable here in this country with our governance rules and things like that. So I just want to know that there's a follow through.
Right. Was there any other commentary? I think it was pretty well explained about the things that you did there and how it impacts on us and the things that you could bring back from your learnings, from lecturers, from the process, from the group discussions and how it actually applies here in this particular context, governance and a whole host of various different issues. So,
and as part of the program too, Bloomberg Harvard requires to have a follow-up with them.
Yeah, great.
So it's not just a case of we've attended a course and all the very best.
Mm-hmm.
There's regular contact with them at 6, 12 and 18 months. They want to monitor our performance. That's why they requested that we identify success measures as well, to see that we can, through the implementation of the action that we've identified, measure that we've had a tangible impact on it.
Can't measure it, can't manage it, right?
And a program like this might be offered in Australia, but we had the unique opportunity. It was a program Bloomberg were offering, and we were successful in getting it there. A lot of the things we learned cross borders, they weren't just focused on Australia or internationally. They can be applied everywhere.
Yeah, I think the thing to consider is Michael Bloomberg. There's not too many billionaires in the world. He's just focused on wanting to give local government a lift. He's focused on local government across the globe, and to be able to access that has been pretty significant. I met him when I was over there, so did Karen, and he's been to Hobart. He knows Hobart, and so I think what we're learning is cross-cultural between multiple different countries. There were New Zealanders when we were there, for instance, so I do think it's directly applicable to us. But we can keep updating the council on some implementation of Bloomberg initiatives, I think, given your interest. So.
Any further comments? Yes, Councillor Kelly.
Look, it's great to get a report back. I think any of us who go away, paid or unpaid or whatever it is, on council business or something that's there for the benefit of the council, we should all report back. Whether it's me going to Queensland for a building conference or not, which I've done before and all that. So I think this should become a part and parcel. It's probably not a bad idea for big conferences like this or learning programs that we even know in advance. I might want to have a word to you. Like, hey Mike, how about, it might be just a one page, I'm going to this to learn this. I might even email and say, actually I'm really interested in that little topic down there. Any chance of
It was a really interesting process, Councillor Kelly. We were only advised 6 weeks out from the course commencing that we could actually even apply for this course. So it came to us at the very last minute. We also wanted to do, once we were known we were successful, we wanted to do a little bit of promotion about it. But Bloomberg's Harvard put a bit of an embargo on that, and we weren't able to actually promote it, which I found a bit disappointing because I wanted to promote how well we'd done to be able to get on this course. So that was their request, and we agreed to it, of course.
Yeah.
But where possible, if anyone going overseas, it's good to know in advance, I think, for the outside, if you're in the mainland. Instead of going in the newspaper up and finding someone's on the other side of the world and all that sort of stuff. So that's great. Thanks for your report.
Thank you.
Great, thanks, and that's noted. Any further comments? No, thank you so
Just
much.
got one more and I'll be really quick. It's just to do a quick wrap up on the Youth Climate Action Fund. So we were provided with funding of around 235,000 from Bloomberg to fund 29 youth-led projects around climate change. Their value was between 1,500 and 7,500. We've supported things like garden transformation, bicycle challenges, art campaigns and backyard conservation. If anyone's interested, the list of projects are on the website. And we've also got an opportunity to apply for a third round of funding, which we've put an EOI in. So that will just continue that good work that we're doing in the climate change space, and it aligns to our climate strategy as well. So that's quick and...
Thank you. Any questions, comments? No? Thank you very much for the presentation. Lovely. Thank you so much.
Great, Michael. Thank you.
Yeah, well done. Thank you so much. We'll now move on. We'll now move on to 7.2, which is the Macquarie Point Multipurpose Stadium, and just the order and council role and responsibilities. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. So a bit of a quick overview. I don't know if you've all had the opportunity to look at the order, but the order was made on the 21st of October. And that specifies the conditions upon which the project can proceed, subject obviously to parliamentary approval. Relevant for us is Schedule 8 at the very end, which lists all the agencies responsible for enforcement. And relevantly, we are listed as a relevant regulator of 23 of the 29 conditions. I'll go into a little bit more detail about point 3, but the major enforcement responsibilities for council will really be after the stadium operations begin, with noise and patron numbers. So clause 5 of the order says that the permit conditions are permit conditions as if they were issued on a permit under LUPA. So therefore all the LUPA provisions kick in, and it's an offence to not comply with a permit condition under section 63. You would have seen I set out in the report that while the planning authority commits an offence if it fails to take reasonable steps to enforce the planning scheme, which also includes compliance with permits, it's really authorised officers who are on the ground enforcement officers who have to undertake the practical day-to-day compliance. So the General Manager authorises officers for the purposes of LUPA, and they're the ones that undertake the compliance work. We investigate the breaches, we issue notices, and we make recommendations on prosecution. We only have to take reasonable steps to enforce our planning scheme, so we don't have to achieve full compliance. So that means that we don't have to take formal enforcement action for breaches. We can try and achieve voluntary compliance, we can give warning notices, we can speak to people who are not complying, and for minor breaches we can take different action, and that's reflected in our enforcement policy that Council endorsed in 2022, which basically says when we decide what action to take, we consider things such as the risk of harm, the appropriate use of council resources and the like. Given we are nominated as the responsible agency for so many conditions, we have entered into discussions with the state government to formalise a memorandum of understanding, which would actually involve the General Manager authorising officers in other agencies for the purposes of enforcing LUPA. And we have advocated that position, that it should be other agencies, back in June in 2025, when this council endorsed a submission to the TPC about the permit conditions. So that MOU will allocate enforcement to the most appropriate entity and enable appointment, as I said, of state officers as authorised officers.
Importantly, what that will do is make sure that the people who are responsible for determining compliance with conditions, i.e. does the plan meet the permit conditions, are also responsible for enforcing those conditions. And as I've said there, what our aim is through the MOU is our focus will really be on those conditions that impact our assets, so the stormwater conditions and the other conditions that are in Schedule 7, and on post-operation business as usual type conditions. For example, there's a condition in there about patron numbers. That's no different to any other venue that operates around the city. If we get a complaint that their numbers exceed that's approved by the permit, then we take appropriate action with respect to that. What does that mean for us? I've prepared a table that you would have seen in the report that sets out quite a number of, or a little bit of detail, what's required for enforcement and is it ongoing or limited. From a council perspective, as I said, the major ones are, well, what I've said there, first of all, the major one under the order is, have the plans been submitted and approved by the Secretary at the relevant time? So that's really going to be an ongoing discussion with the state government about whether or not that has actually been done. And as with our normal enforcement procedures, it's complaint driven. We'll be relying on the state government to give us information about those breaches to whether or not we need to take action. The biggest concern or the biggest resource implication for us is likely to arise, as I said, during post-operation. So complaints about noise, complaints about patron numbers. The conditions that are in the order are fairly extensive. With noise, there has to be significant noise monitoring. So if we get a complaint about noise, there's provision for us to ask for that noise monitoring to determine whether or not that complaint can actually be verified. And the same with patrons. There's a whole lot of conditions that require them to do post-event reporting. So again, we'll be able to confirm compliance or not. What are the risks for council? Well, the biggest one is obviously that council has to ensure compliance with the permit conditions to avoid council, in fact, committing an offence itself. So we would remain liable if authorised officers under the MOU failed to enforce. So we would be obviously having to step in there. The biggest driver, I think, for the state government in this case will be their reputational risk. If they're not complying or they're not enforcing, fairly significant implications for them. But the MOU will clearly outline the enforcement roles and responsibilities and accountability amongst those agencies. And I already touched on our compliance policy obviously helps council prioritise our enforcement based on our risk and resources and community impact. One of the questions I think was asked at one of the council meetings is what amendments to the order should we be advocating to protect council? The obvious one is that, of course, we could ask for an amendment to Schedule 8 so that council isn't nominated as the relevant regulator. From a legal perspective, that's not recommended, and the reason being is that only council's general manager and authorised officers have illegal enforcement powers under LUPA to enforce compliance. So if we were nominating other agencies as the relevant regulator, they in fact would have no powers. So they actually can't do anything to enforce compliance. So the better option is that council is nominated as a regulator and we authorised officers from those other state government agencies to undertake that work. Very brief overview. I've got open to questions.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor Hippolyte.
Thank you. I'm outraged by this. I just couldn't believe it reading through it. But despite this not being our idea in a project of state significance and special order legislation, that we would still have the legal position that we're responsible for this enforcement. I guess, given that if we assume we can't change that, we're just working within the framework to minimise the risk to us and the costs of time to do enforcement. I guess I'm concerned about lots of things, but one of the things that comes to mind is being something that if we're responsible particularly for things like noise and lighting and crowd management and numbers and all of the practical things in the management of the stadium, that to me sounds like a huge amount of work and a whole additional stadium enforcement team that would need to be across that process. But also the public perceptions of who's at fault and where the complaints go, whether they're to state or to council, and how much we're going to be lumped with complaints for the infrastructure that's been enforced in our municipality, that we don't have much say in how to manage, you know. So obviously traffic is not a council that I can see in the table that falls to state, but we're going to receive the complaints for the traffic jams through Hobart. We're going to receive the complaints for all sorts of things, and even the ones that are delegated to us, like noise, you know, that in itself would be a huge body of work. So how do we make sure in this MOU that we're able to enforce it under the legislation, and making sure that we give that enforcement power to the state organisations as much as possible, but also make sure that the public are aware that, you know, if they're calling us, what can we actually do about it? Will there be a publicly listed available log of complaints? I think it's a massive spider web to untangle, and it's really unfortunate.
Yeah, I think the thing to understand with it, because there's been a push to have us responsible for everything. And if you use another example like the hospital, for instance, so we issue a planning permit, you issue a planning permit for the hospital. Within that, there's all sorts of things that need to be approved, like a new operating theatre or a new emergency, you know, area. Like what they tried to do was to have the council have to sign off on what the operating theatre, you know, would need to do to comply with, or what the emergency would need to do comply with. Whereas that's not what we can do as a council. That's where the resources would get tied up if we got drawn into that. What we need to be able to say is, yep, it meets its setbacks. Yep, it's been built to the right height. Yep, it's actually, you know, complying with those level of things. And so that's where the MOU has really been quite vital in actually making sure that that stuff's really clearly understood, that we are just basically, if you take it as just being a big planning permit, which is what it is, then it's around understanding that ours is really just that, you know, is that regulator role, not the actual approver role, which is what the rest with the state growth mostly. So
Apart from the enforcement side of things, by the sound of it.
yeah. Well,
I think it's important to note that the way the condition, Kirsten worked really closely with the other agencies to make sure that the conditions are framed in a way so that if we do get a complaint, we can go, right, provide us with your noise records that you've already kept. The time that noise monitoring gets really tricky is if we don't have that information already at our fingertips, and we're sort of cracking out the noise monitors, and it all gets very tricky in terms of what should the noises be. All of that greyness has been taken out, and it's going to be a very straightforward process. I understand what you're saying about we can't stop the complaints, but it's set up in a way so that it's going to be as streamlined as possible.
So you feel quite confident that the responsibility is not going to fall back too much on council because of the delegated authorisation we're giving to the state departments?
Yes, and the way that the conditions are set up, the limited role that we will have will be frankly, like any other big development.
And as the report sort of states that you don't anticipate too much extra cost to council's daily business?
no.
Okay.
Yes, Councillor Harvey.
So just to follow up, Karen, if this had been approved, for example, by council through the normal process, we would still be in the same situation with the compliance stuff. It wouldn't be any different.
That's right.
Slightly, sorry, to disagree, it's slightly different because the way that the order is set up is that all approval of all those, you know, and there's a whole list of them in the first page of the table in, you know, the staging plan, public domain and landscaping plan, signage and wayfinding plan, all those plans have to be approved by the state. So if this was a council permit, we would have to approve all those in the first place. Yeah. We don't have to do that. That's a huge body of work and huge cost that we won't have to do. And we also won't have to confirm, our role will be confirming that they have actually been approved before works commence, but the state will be telling us that. So it's not us actually proactively having to do any work with respect to that.
If it's saved, and is that, will we end up with things that are genuinely, are they going to push things through? Or will we be able to will we be confident that what they're approving, all these other, you know, these things that need to be approved on as we go along, won't just be waved through?
Yeah, well, that's been one of the concerns that, you know, that some of the members are raising in terms of, you know, the secretary in terms of his sign off and not being overly influenced by their political masters, for instance. So the state government does need to provide the Chinese walls around that, just the same as we would. And we manage these situations probably more regularly than the state. So.
But there's also requirements in the order about consultation with relevant parties, and we have to be consulted on just about everyone. There's also a design panel that plans have to be referred to the design panel, and the comments of the design panel have to be made public. So if the secretary chooses to disregard those, it's going to be public as to that they have disregarded those. So there is in fact a lot of safeguards built into the order that we negotiated through the POS process that have remained in here, which are quite onerous on the proponent.
Okay, so just one more time with emphasis. So nothing much is going to change. There's not going to be additional officers needed to be employed or additional resources. It's just business as usual for council to do all this work. This is just treated as another big project.
That's right. That's what we're expecting.
Thank you. Any further comments? Yes, Councillor Potts.
Are we Teflon when it comes to this project for this kind of compliance and statutory requirement stuff? In terms of if this goes pear-shaped, which I don't know, I've looked at a few projects around the state that might have gone pear-shaped recently. Is there any reputational risk to us in what we've framed up as our role? Because obviously we're framing out what our role is a little bit here. So is what we've framed up putting a shield between us and the stadium for if it goes belly up?
We're not approving it.
Yeah, no, I'm aware of that, but I'm trying to get how far back are we? Does everything, will it come to a point where something like, you know, the POS process was confined? I don't know if the stadium order is confined now. Have the boundaries changed?
It's confined. Yeah, no, it doesn't include, like, it's confined to just the precinct in the stadium.
But does that include around the corner to Regatta Point, which the POS did not?
No, so the order follows from the POS.
Yeah.
So the POS made a recommendation to the minister.
Yeah.
And the minister has chosen under the POS process, they can make a different recommendation. They don't have to accept that recommendation, and they can make a different recommendation to the governor, which is what has occurred. But the parameters of the project remain as they were under the POS process.
So it remains unclear then what happens with housing and stuff at Regatta Point. None of that is, you know,
Not included in this.
not included in this, but also kind of not anywhere at present.
Well, I mean, that work is progressing. I mean, we had an elected member briefing last week with the Northern Access Road. I think the housing plans are still being developed. So,
but it doesn't turn on this decision.
No.
That's what you're saying.
Yeah, the key thing I'm trying to find out is like, are we fully removed? Are we fully shielded?
My view would be
this goes pear-shaped.
so we've got a role. So we don't approve it. We are given an approval by the state government. Our role is to make sure that it's delivered in accordance with that approval. So largely, I mean, I'd say unless we were to look past it being constructed 10 metres higher than it was allowed to be, then that's obviously we wouldn't do that. But if that were to happen and we were to miss it, you know, potentially, but I can't see that.
So the only thing would be sort of misadventure, like a mistake made through at officer level, that then was one part and it's not compliant because that was just a human.
But again, we're just the backstop. It's they're required to comply with their permit, you know, as in the developer. So,
Any other comments, questions? No? Oh yes, Councillor Dutto.
Thank you. Now, I'm just trying to understand this clearly in my own mind. So if you look at it under clause 5, that then ties up with the looper and the powers, etc., ours becomes the enforcement. Now, so there are two arms for me. One arm is the memorandum of understanding at operational level that we have negotiated, and it's come out pretty well. And having read the order myself, you know, I was quite pleased that the compliance, not only that, but also that we will be consulted And I think that's a good protection for us. That's pretty clearly stated, and I take my hat off for that, that they've incorporated that. Now, so that's one arm. The second arm is what I would call the other issues that's not in the operational arm of the member of understanding, which the motion that we had passed on the 27th October. So those issues and then the financial implications, for example, columns to breach, etc. Can we enter into that, or we are simply going to be invited and we don't have any power or right, as it were? It's the privilege and the right of the government.
Yeah, that's a good question. So if you consider the order is the planning permit, it's an instrument, and so therefore we've sort of dealt with the technical and professional elements of the instrument, and that's right. That's that other arm you're talking about. So this other arm is around the potential other implications, which might be things like if the transport solutions don't go as well as what the modelling of the applicant says, and there's a need for further infrastructure, does that fall to us? And that's so we've initiated those conversations with the department last week following council's motion, but it has to be it's going to be separate to the planning permit part, if you like, for us to actually discuss and negotiate, what's a reasonable position for us to take. Like for us, it would be in that, if you use the bridge as an example, that if it turns out that the stadium can't be accommodated within the existing infrastructure, we would expect that the state would be funding any additional infrastructure that's needed to accommodate persons exiting the stadium. That would be it at ferry terminal, be it additional pedestrian infrastructure. So again, we can't compel it, but that's the discussion we've got to have, and we've initiated that. But I guess it's important to understand that it's separate to the actual POS, but it's important nonetheless.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, and that's hence the motion. I think there was the understanding was that the MOE has two arms. The operational aspect, that's fine, left to the council staff, and I think you've done a fantastic job with regards to that, and also taking the order in the context of the POS report. They have put us in there as to be consulted before decisions can be made. But my motion was referring to the other arm, and that's the clarity.
And that'll still take a few months to work through. So
yeah, but at least it's in motion.
It is.
Thank you.
Any further comments, questions? No, being none. Thank you very much for your presentation, and we'll move on to the next item, and that is 7.3, the Economic Development Delivery Framework. Thank you, Sarah. Great, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Afternoon, everybody. Purpose of this briefing is to update elected members on proposed changes to the delivery of the 2023-28 Economic Development Strategy. You might recall that the current strategy was endorsed by Council, I think, in September 2023. And what tonight is about is talking through just the way proposed changes by way of development of an economic development delivery framework that'll sharpen up and improve the way in which we deliver economic development as a city over the next 5 years and beyond. So it's also an annual plan initiative, so the review of the city's economic development strategy to ensure the alignment with economic trends, community aspirations, and as part of building the world's best small capital city. So the current strategy, you may be aware, has 35 actions listed in it across 4 different thematic themes. Done a review of that shows that most of them, almost 2/3, 63% of those actions are listed elsewhere in corporate strategy. So it's an organisation with multiple strategies. A lot of the strategies that sit within the economic development strategy sit elsewhere. So what we're proposing here is that for those roles, the economic development team's role will be to provide advice or an advisory service to other departments when and as needed in terms of delivering those other actions that sit outside what we're calling core economic development actions. So of the remaining actions, the 13 actions that are remaining that are considered more core economic development actions, what we've done is group those 13 into 6 action areas. So the new thing that's been introduced here is not having a long list of actions, but some of those existing actions that the 13. Some of them are a bit duplicative, are copied and can cross over into similar bodies of work that we'll focus on in the annual delivery plan. So of those 13, we've condensed them down to those 6 there. And I'll just quickly go through what those 6 will involve in this annual delivery framework approach. The first one is looking at the growing the visitor economy, which is something we have the TTIC and do work in that space, and there's lots of organisations in Hobart that play in the visitor economy and tourism space. But our role is some of the work we're doing around looking at our visitor services model and how we can influence and advocate for what the state government's doing on the mountain by way of potential interpretive centre there, but also, I guess, have a look at our role in terms of tourism or visitor economy industry development, which some of the other organisations probably perhaps don't focus on. Growing the nighttime economy, it's a big opportunity for Hobart. We've got a roundtable this Thursday that we're hosting with 20 different nighttime economy stakeholders from the CBD to look at putting together a bit of a plan from them, with them, modelled off what other states are doing. I attended a forum recently in Sydney where I've met the Queensland and the New South Wales nighttime economy commissioners who've talked about the journey those states have been through in terms of regulatory changes and a range of other actions that they've been working on to get their nighttime economy going in those locations. Number 3 is looking at the, collecting and using data, picking up on some of the points early tonight about the importance of data and making decision making. So reviewing work we're doing in dashboards and information we have across the organisation, but also citywide data when we review our smart city initiatives and particularly the role of the Internet of Things across our city in terms of driving decision making. Something to look at a workforce attraction and talent attraction program. So it's a very common thing in economic development for cities to have workforce development strategies, and they can be very wide. But looking at doing some work in that space around workforce development. One initiative that we probably already working on is the Beacon Foundation, which is getting young people disengaged into the workforce, which is an example of a workforce development strategy. But also looking at talent attraction and retention as a city, which we're hearing from industry in some of the work we're doing is a big issue. How we attract and keep talented people in Hobart. The Innovation Precinct Strategic Vision, that's work we've already kicked off via a series of workshops to deliver that Central Hobart Plan initiative recently. It's going very well. And then also review our smart city technologies that we've got to do when we over the next 12 months. So they're the 6 that have been combined, and then in addition to those 6, there's another 4. So for this year's annual delivery plan, the number 7 there is looking at focusing on developing specific industry plans for some of those high growth, high value sectors that we've already identified. Nick's done some work recently that we presented at the State of the City event around 4 key industries that we're going to focus on over the next 12 months. There's a future state of car parking report, which is about looking at technology, overhauling all our technology in our parking business to get improvements in that business, which is an example of, better use of technology, and there'll be an update on that in January to elected members. It's been through the Transport Committee already. Doing some work, place-based work in alignment with the North Hobart plan. So trying to work with the North Hobart retailers there to get a bit of a place activation plan that's separate from the town planning type approach, and looking at events and parking and other activations that we can be doing down there that support the North Hobart neighbourhood plan. And then finally, they're looking at putting together an investment incentives program, which may include things like a concierge service to attract investment, and looking at what we can offer them as financial and also intangible incentives to invest in Hobart, along the lines of what we're doing with the housing incentives program as well. So they're the 10. So how do they fit? How are they delivered, and why are they the things we're sort of proposing to be focused on for this 12-month period? They're all part of a broader framework, which is noted in the report. But elements of the new delivery framework have a few things. One, a new aspirational economic development vision. And you'll see a lot of things on the next slide when I explain the framework aren't necessarily new things that have been heard, but just been put together in a different way in some instances under a new under the new framework. So it has an aspirational vision to build the world's best small capital city. Has tangible, measurable economic performance indicators, including what we'll develop next year is around the jobs target, an aspirational target to focus economic growth, and has these 4 new strategic approaches to how we will approach the problem and the challenge of economic development of Hobart going forward. So I'll go through those quickly. The action areas, which I just talked about, the 10, that will be reviewed each year around the time before and in alignment with the State of the City event. So we held a State of the City event this year. So that'll be about around the time when we look to the community to get a bit of a report card, but also get feedback on initiatives that we can design in partnership with our community each year. So it'll create greater agility in the delivery, and it won't be a static fixed process. We'll have actions that are to be delivered over 5 years, and there'll be annual updates of actions that will come in and out through the process, creating a more agile approach. But it'll also be a focus on engagement as we go. The current strategy had a lot of community engagement. So, for example, the Innovation Precinct, the round tables that we're holding are examples of engagement with the industry. As we go, that'll help us craft actions and update them. So how it works, so the framework on a page sort of looks like this. It's got the aspirational vision to be building the world's best small capital city, but putting some metrics around that. How do we measure that? What does that mean? And tying that to something more tangible that we can get data to measure some economic outcomes in achieving that aspiration. So a common one, there's many frameworks we could pick out there for doing this to set some metrics around. A common one that's accepted by, I guess, in economic development and by economists is the 3 Ps model. So everything's got a 3 Ps or a 4 Cs model. Economic development's no different. So the 3 Ps in economic development that people talk about are around productivity, population, and participation. So productivity is obviously big on the national agenda at the moment, but cities are a big part of that agenda and what cities can do, capital cities particularly, around driving national productivity. So narrowing that down to some productivity indicators in Hobart. Population, obviously, if you can attract more businesses and more population, you have a bigger economy, you have better growth. But being very conscious of doing that in a place, if we're attracting and growing population, we're doing it in alignment with our climate action target of having 0 emissions by 2040. So how we do that. And then labour force participation. So the total proportion of our working age population that's engaged in the labour market, increasing that. And Tasmania is behind the national average on labour force participation. So how we engage greater proportion of our labour force or of our working age population in the labour force will be important. So they're the 3 broad metrics. And below that, we can measure it in some of these indicators: health, education, literacy, for example, transport, and other indicators of labour market productivity, which are useful. Population, it's easy to measure in different ways, again, against a carbon budget, and labour force participation around literally that. We can pick off different cohorts in that space around labour, youth, cultural participation, and other things. So they're the metrics we use. But the 4 new strategies, I guess, are around thinking about how we leverage the arts as a driver as a catalyst for innovation in our city. So the work, for example, that we're doing in the Innovation Precinct, we've got our major cultural arts organisations involved there, and they're very much talking about arts as a driver of creativity. Creativity is an input to business growth and innovation. So how we're obviously very strong in the arts, in the cultural arts, how we try over that connection between that strength into our labour force and into our business community with specific strategies. The second one is around stronger partnerships with business and our community organisations to drive participation. So arts and sports and those types of organisations that engage our residents, has been working closely with them through partnerships to get our community engaged in those spaces, which is in alignment with a lot of our community programs, for example. Data, spoken about earlier, how we use data and also AI to engage and promote Hobart's advantages to live and work and invest here, to create a new narrative around the promotion of Hobart. We're very, very humble in Hobart, so it's maybe changing some of the messaging around how we promote to mainland investment around why invest, why live here in Hobart through data and obviously research and the engagement we do with our community. And finally, it's just how we use technology to drive productivity, specifically across our city. So things that we could do across our city, particularly the IoT space, better to drive decision making across the urban footprint, and obviously be, you know, in that space, obviously building a connection to overseas investment and investment channels through a global approach. So below that, these are the actions that I've just spoken through. So the action areas would align to that framework, which I've just been through. They're 10 at the moment. And then obviously below that, they're the things that we'd focus on. And each year we'd update those around that state of the city time and the actions that can come in and out, and depending what's recommended or discussed at the City Economy Committee, or comes through elected member discussions, or is prioritised in annual plans that will be picked up and put through that action, those added to those action areas. And then they work that way. And obviously there's a lot of stuff we do as an organisation that's below the line that aligns with those things. So they're those things that talking about not that are sort of out of scope for direct economic development facilitation, but connect with that anyway. And lots of things there that align. So that is it.
Thank you.
Quick.
Anybody questions, comments? Yes, Alderman Bloomfield.
I love it. And I love the fact that there's the North Hobart element being brought into it, because that's something that I've been fighting for since I got elected. And I know this is the first one, and I'm hoping that we'll have others like Criterion Street, Salamanca, South Hobart. There's so many places that once we've got it right in that one, that we can do more, which is really exciting. And the other thing was, I know that Councillor Harvey and Councillor Posselt came with me, and possibly I think the Lord Mayor as well. We went to the Innovation Forum that time. I know I got a lot out of it by sitting with the members listening to what happened, because a lot of what they said didn't reach the paper. And I felt some of the real jewels that I got from that night came from that table that I sat at. So I'm a bit sad that I've actually got another function on that same night. You've got this new one on, so I'd really be interested in knowing what the direct information that comes from those tables is, so that I can learn a little bit more about what the night economy truly wants. Because I do know that the what's the word? The design or the way innovative IT industry now works is so profoundly different to Procreate now and things like that, that I think that, you know, just maybe we might have a similar change that we haven't foreseen yet in the nighttime economy as well. So I think it's a really good opportunity to learn and get ahead of it. Yeah, other than that, I'm just really excited just to see real change, and far more than just giving a few grants for a few windows. So we're finally really getting on top of what needs to happen to actually truly address the economy growth. And also too, with the attracting the skills, I think you had that part there, and you mentioned Beacon as one example. I'd be interested to know what ideas you have about attracting other core elements. I'm assuming that might be, I don't know, resources that particular businesses need, or particular types of, I don't know, maybe it could be chefs, or it could be mechanics, or something that's like a unique skill set that you're looking for. I'd be really interested to see what you're doing at that, because that's typical of the kind of things that I get pushed for as a tax agent, like, you know, where the business gets stopped because they just can't do that one next thing. If I understand what the body of knowledge or the approach is, then either I can add to it, or feed more people to it for you.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor Harvey.
Yes, thank you. Yep, love the work. It's good. However, I'd like to make a little adjustment if I can. So grow the visitor economy, I'd love to see that as grow the low carbon visitor economy. And when you look at the data, so 76% of global travellers express a desire to make more sustainable environmental choices, and 9%, sorry, a total of tourism emissions surged over the last decade and now make up 9% of the global total. So they're a big deal. Most people fly to Tasmania, so it's going to hit 1 million people at some point. So you've also got these great partners who you've mentioned. We need to find partners. Business Events Tasmania, they run the conferences in Tassie. Most of the conference, they don't run the conferences, sorry, they spruik conferences to come to Tasmania, and then your conference organisers do the work. And Michael and I attended a forum with Business Tasmania year or two ago, where we heard from the sector that was in Tasmania to check out what's going on in Tasmania, and they loved Tasmania. And there was 8 of us at my table. All of them, I won't use the exact words they used, but they all said we're a bit cactus, right? And that we need to go down this path. They said, I won't swear, but they all thought the same thing about tourism and where the world's heading. And these were the people that go out and find people to have conferences in Tasmania. And Business Events Tasmania is really cognizant of the fact that most of the conferences that come to Tasmania come here because there's an opportunity to have a lower carbon conference in Tassie, because the conference organisers are working towards that. So that's talk to Marnie about that. The other one is Destination Southern Tasmania. They've been working on their environmental sustainability for a while now. They've got a group, hasn't met for a while, but they do have a group, and they kind of pull their hair out a bit on how to do this. How do we make tourism sustainable in Tasmania? And they know that it's got to happen. And the other one is Brand Tasmania, come down for air, and come here and drink the water, and all those environmental messages that they send. So they're conscious of this as well, that our brand is driven by the environment. So for us, who's got this climate change strategy, who's got this desire to get 95% of our organics out of the green bins and into the organics system, it makes sense in my brain. It makes sense to talk about tourism as a solution rather than growing tourism. I don't want more people coming to Tas. I want people who are coming here for the right reasons and support a growing eco-tourism sector, and happy to spend more money to do that rather than a cheaper form of tourism. But I'd rather have boutiques, a bit elitist for it, but I'd rather have quality of tourism rather than mass tourism, if we can. And I just think aiming high for a low carbon visitor economy will attract people, because your options are, you want to have a low carbon holiday in Australia, do you fly to Tasmania from Sydney, or do you catch the train to Alice Springs or to wherever, So we're competing against a market where it's easier to get to places, potentially in a low carbon way, than it is to Tasmania. You've either got to catch the ferry, or you fly, or you paddle a kayak across Bass Strait. So it's very challenging. So I'd like to think we focus on that. And it would really reinforce the fact that we've put all this time, energy and big cost into developing a climate strategy. So I think we need to link these up. Partners are there. They're already doing this stuff. And I think we need to work with them and help them develop their strategies. So that's what I would think. And a low carbon nighttime economy. How do you do that? We'll walk home. I don't know.
Flat beer. CO2 and beer.
Yeah. Anyway, but that's it's just that green side of society has to continue to be pushed. So I think just changing a couple of words, is it going to deliver the same message or not? I don't know, but I just think we've got to be holistic in our approach, and not drop the climate stuff and the environmental stuff by pushing for more tourists when we can do both. Anyway,
Thank you, Councillor
thanks for
Harvey.
listening.
Yes, Councillor Fossett.
Thank you, Chair. Great, good start. It's really good to see we're moving, as Alderman Bluefield had said, in the right direction. I guess some sentiment to what Councillor Harvey has said, but more rather than focusing on the environmental stuff from a tourism perspective, but just remembering, I guess, that there are reasons that people come to Hobart, and it's usually boutique, immersive, quality experiences. And a lot of it is just about our city. As a city, you go, when you go to Europe, you go to Amsterdam, and you kind of just go to Amsterdam. People come to Hobart and just go to Hobart and eat in a great restaurant and go and experience the waterfront. So I think I agree with Councillor Harvey from the lines that we do have a unique place in terms of environmental tourism, but we also keep winning tourism awards. I think we need to reflect on that. We keep winning tourism awards, so we're doing something right. So what is it that we're doing right? We need to enhance and amplify that, and make sure that we don't dilute it with stuff that's wrong, which is a challenge. It's a real challenge. And some of that is the environmental credentials that Councillor Harvey speaks to, but certainly things like beautifying our streets actually is a tourism outcome that people don't recognise. Beautiful streets and beautiful cities people want to come to and explore and be in. And it's funny how it touches on the broader strategies, which you've identified that it is across the organisation, a lot of the economic development strategies, there's this ongoing, very, very strong push from the public for more street trees. And again, that goes to that beautifying the city, attracting people here. I did have a question about Hello Hobart, which is mentioned in the briefing paper and also in the presentation. Have we ever considered an alternative model for delivering the same outcome in terms of, is it core council business? Is it something that we would prefer to pay a PR agency or there's a number of different publications like Bottom of the World that have decent followings online that are curated by professionals whose job it is to do that, I guess, compared to our media team who are kind of PR and media for us. Have we considered outsourcing Hello Hobart to people that maybe have more expertise and capability?
We haven't looked at outsourcing it at this stage, but there's no reason why we couldn't consider that. We've got a great working relationship with the marketing and comms team who look after all content development and delivery, and it's our role to sort of assist in setting the strategy around what we want to focus on. But we're in the middle of sort of revisiting what that strategy looks like, and so that's probably something that we need to add into the mix.
Yeah, I think they do a great job promoting us, the City of Hobart, and all of our assets and natural assets, and they do a great job promoting businesses around the city as well. I just wonder whether or not an alternate agency could do a better job, cheaper than what we do here, and allow our team to focus on the core stuff. But other than that, I think it looks great. Again, emphasis on the nighttime economy. These things are so difficult, so complicated, but when I went out to the people and asked what we could do to improve the nighttime economy, I was actually gobsmacked. About 90% of responses said public transport. Said that the one thing that's killing nighttime economy here is that you can't get home after a night out. And so, it would be good to see when we go through this economic development how broad we cast that net and how broad our thinking is as well. Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Tim.
Thanks very much. Any further comments? Yes, Councillor Kelly.
Yeah, it is complicated, but it doesn't have to be if we just get these basics. I mean, I think we've got to be careful we're not tripping over state government. You look up and you hear state government about the nighttime economy and what they're doing and their high ideas. So I just like to make sure we're totally integrated to those guys, because we might be diametrically opposed here. Yeah, heritage is a big reason. People, 25% of people who come to Hobart have reasons because of history and heritage and all that. They're heavily influenced, and so the stats say. Nighttime economy. Yeah, all our things now do come back to that public transport issue. That's, you go to the bigger capital cities, you can hop on that public transport and whisk from one end of town to the other. And once again, I don't think we need an answer for that, short of a good public transport system. But I just think integration with these, like the traders, like North Hobart Traders, for instance, vibrant city area. And when I was president of the traders there for many years, we were just promised so much from council, and it's not a criticism of this council, it's one's previous. Just absolutely nothing happened. Many years ago, there used to be advertisements on TV, visit North Hobart and all that. It just fell off the cliff. We just got consistently different people coming promising you nothing would happen. They're the foot soldiers that get out there and do that work, and they're the one, they're the key people, the smaller players that we get things happening and get that nighttime economy going. That conference that a few of us went to in Brisbane, the biggest reason people in New York and around those areas there they like going to local venues with local musicians. Sure, the big acts are great, and they're a big sugar hit and they're a big bang, but that consistent week in, week out, Thursday, Friday, Saturday night stuff is from those local businesses. That's the foundation stone of everything really, and that gets the buzz and the activity and all that sort of stuff. And we just got to get that good relationship with the traders and they can do all the work for us, you know. But unfortunately, a lot of the times they're not represented well. They're so busy going about their day-to-day business, they just don't have time to get themselves organised and all that. So I just see that as a real way. You know, we've been canned out for 38 and 80 something nighttime economies. One of the recent polls was, I'm not saying that's right or not, but it's not a good indicator. Yeah, it's just not going to happen overnight, and it's so I think it's great what you guys are doing. It's a good start, but hopefully we've just got to measure that as we go.
Thank you. Any further comments? Yes, Councillor Blackburn.
Thank you. Now, once again, I would also like to comment. Thank you for that. I think we're on the right track. I just want to bring in my own personal experience. Again, sorry to share the personal experiences, but in the last year or two, I've traveled a number of cities, and I've just come back recently from just last night, in fact, from traveling to Manila, and I was in KL. And before that, Singapore and a few other countries as well. Now, I met a gentleman who was from Dubai, and he shared with some of the things how Dubai has changed. Now, it may not be our type of thing, but some of the principles and the way they brought about change is just amazing. And what I got attracted to was your statement where you said that we want to build the world's best small city. Now, that grabbed me because the sec of Dubai said, I want to make Dubai world's #1 city in transport, in tourism. There was another T. And they've now taken over Heathrow with regards to the number of people that move through Dubai. They have built the #1 most highest, tallest building, 163-story building. And they've 10, 20 years ago, when they looked at the intelligence, they looked at technology. The leader said, we're going to grab this, and this is where we want to be in 10, 20 years' time. So they're now leading the Middle Eastern world. And he then recommended a book to me that I should read. It is fascinating. But I'm thrilled to see that we are wanting to build the world's best, most city. I think that's fantastic. But what the guy said to me, that's only inspirational and visionary if we put it on the wall. What we need to do is to look at the practicalities and the realities, how we can achieve this. So the question for me is, what are the traits of the best small city? What's the criteria? What are we going to measure to say, yes, this is the best city? So I'm quite excited with that we want to bring in. But the night economy, again, it's a population thing as well. And our older population are not so keen and interested. But the younger generation want to have that night economy. And coming again from these Asian cities, I was just blown away from the nighttime economy that they have until 12 to 1 in the morning. And we haven't got that. And so for us to move to see how we can accommodate it and bring about the change. And the wonderful thing there was, in the city in KL, they hired local talents, the band to sing, and the food stalls all around. And I think we need to invest in that as well, as a city, if we want to, pay this local talent that we have to have these parties along. So that attracts, like we have in Sandy Bay. I think that summertime is fantastic. So if we can move it to some other suburbs, would be an ideal way to go. But there's so much there that we could pursue and bring about. It'll be fantastic for the city. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any further comments? No, being none, thank you very much for your time. Appreciate
Thanks,
it. Wonderful presentation. Thank you so much. So we'll move on to number 8, responses to questions without notice. Can I just move all from 8.1 to 8.4 in a bulk? Somebody happy to do that? Councillor Lohberger. All those in favour?
Aye.
Aye. All those against? No. Carry unanimously. Thank you. Number 9, questions without notice. Are there any? No. Being none, we move to 10. I'll just close the open portion of the meeting. Can I have somebody move that, please? Councillor Lohberger, thank you very much. All those in favour? Aye. Those against? No. Carry unanimously. Thank you.